Yeah, we're good. I did like 4 tests a day on it. We'll see. But anyway, that's really good food for thought, because what we're talking about today is the relapse dynamic primarily, or generally, but we're going to focus on the very first stage of the relapse dynamic. Have y'all ever done that for family group?
No.
Yet? Okay, so we were talking about it last night. I guess it's been a while since we've done it. Well, I'll do it at length later, or soon. But what we're going to focus on tonight is denial. Let me read this thing, and then we'll talk about all 10 of them. That's this right here. Every addict, alcoholic goes through these 9 stages before we use. So the whole idea of, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened. Oh man, I didn't mean for that. Oh gosh, I wasn't even thinking about it. None of that's at play. There are very specific stages that we go through long before we ever actually drink or use again. And the kicker is you know, if you're not really focused on recovery, we actually like live in the first 4. So the first 4 stages: denial, avoidance and defensiveness, crisis building, and immobilization are always present. And if we don't catch it within those 4 phases or those 4 stages, there's probably no turning back. It's likely that we'll turn back. Most people live in a little bit of denial. You know, most people deal with some avoidance issues. Most people, you know, you have a stressful enough situation and you can start crisis building a little bit, you know, the oh my God, and kind of have a very anxious, hopeless experience or whatever, just that fear of, oh gosh, how's this going to work out? But with normal people, they can work their way through that. They recognize they have an ability to reason and to problem solve in healthy ways, and so they can work their way through those kind of experiences. With the addict alcoholic, there's no stopping. There's only one way to get out of the relapse dynamic, and that's to immediately begin practicing recovery. You know, we say this all the time. We're either in our addiction or we're in recovery. We just haven't used yet. You know, that's where the term refers to, you know, addict behavior. Oh, that's such addict behavior. The person may not have used for years, but it's still addict behavior. We engage in addict behavior long before we ever drink and use. Okay, so let me read this little thing on faith real quick. And I hope we're getting a good deal here. In my test earlier, I was able to block out most of that air. It's very hot. It's 100. Oh, it was 100 today, or this week. We got close to 100, 103, something like that. And we got air going. We got fans going, just to stay cool. And so hopefully that's not really affecting our audio too much tonight. But here's a little quick thing on faith. How many times have you wished that we could overcome the addiction or compulsion that keeps us in bondage? We know what it's like to struggle with the effects of addiction and the craziness that it brings into our lives. We may feel despair and wonder if there really is any way out of the insanity. Maybe our plight is impossible, at least without God's help. But faith can make even the impossible possible. The apostles said to the Lord, "Show us how to increase our faith." And the Lord answered, "If you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'May you be uprooted and thrown into the sea,' and it would obey you." I tell you the truth. If you had faith, even now he's repeating it. Oh, okay. He's just saying it's also recorded in Matthew. It's recorded in Luke. Okay, so let me move past this. Faith is a mysterious commodity. Jesus says that if we have faith, real faith, it only takes a small amount to make a big difference. We may be exercising faith without even realizing it. It takes faith to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It takes faith to work through the steps of a recovery program. It is comforting to know that God only needs a tiny bit of faith in order to work in powerful ways to restore our sanity. And that I was just kind of grasping at that, but it's funny because it fits what we were talking about last night. What we've been talking about this week. This learning how to rely on a power greater than we are. We don't have to solve all these problems. Okay, so we go through 10 stages, or we end in the 10th stage. Relapse begins long before we ever drink and use again, or the relapse process. Okay, Matt gave us the definition of denial. Relapse is just a return to a former state of, let's say, illness. Okay, so this is why it's so important for families, the people that we spend a lot of time around, our accountability people, also recognize this because they can be very helpful in helping us to see it. Because remember, the first stage of this is denial, which is a refusal to admit reality. So that's why it's so critical that, as we move through recovery, that we're willing to have accountability partners, we're willing to have mentors, sponsors, whatever we're going to call them, and we actually also are willing to listen to them. Right? The minute we go, no, nothing to see here, you don't know what you're talking about, that's nonsense, I'm fine, we're just right back in denial, and now we've just begun the process of relapse. There's an expression in recovery that, that kind of behavior is a person ordering their next drink, they just haven't taken it yet. They just haven't made it to the bar yet to take the drink, but they called and said, get it ready. Because I am now on that relapse train. I'm going to be there shortly. Recovery is all about just being willing to follow a course of action and all that we don't come up with. And a huge part of that is being willing to surround ourselves with people who will hold us accountable, that we're willing to listen to. You're not doing yourself a service if we just ignore all these people that are trying to help us see truth or reality, and we go, no, that's not it. But that's how serious denial is. Denial tells us we don't have it. No, nothing to see here. I'm good. I'm fine. Get off my back. Okay, so what are the rest of the stages? Just real quick before we really delve into denial. By the time we get to the number 4, the stage 4, immobilization stage, it's just like it sounds. We're pretty stuck, right? We're totally in denial. I'm good. I'm fine. You all just need to get off my back, et cetera, et cetera. And then the more we get held accountable, the more avoidant and defensive we get. This is where we start showing more anger. This is we start avoiding more responsibilities. We start avoiding people. And we're probably starting to show up late for work. We're missing days for no apparent reason. We're slipping back into old behavior, and then we crisis build. Everything is a crisis. Oh my God, I had a flat tire today, and it literally will ruin our day. Right? The smallest of things become the biggest things in our mind. All is lost. Oh my God, this is crazy. Nobody can live like this. It's your fault. Until we just get ourselves stuck. And it's funny because when you describe these stages like one by one by one, it's not hard to kind of see this cascade right in front of you. Like, oh my God, yes, I recognize that. Oh my God, that's what's happening. Yeah, that's what's happening. We're heading to disaster. Then we roll into the fifth stage of the dynamic, which is confusion and overreaction. Right now, we're not responding to much of anything very well. Everything, it's funny because, I always say the things that we accuse others of is typically what we're doing. Right? You're just overreacting. You don't know what you're talking about. You are so psycho. You are, all these things. No, we're the ones that are overreacting. We're the ones that feel confused. It's the mirror effect or projection. And by the way, as we go through these stages, we don't just hop from one to the other. We're bringing them all with us. So by the time we get to stage 6, which is depression, we're filled with denial, avoidance, defensiveness, crisis building. We're stuck. Well, of course we're depressed at this point. But what do we do when we're depressed? That would be good if we could admit that. If we could say, oh man, I'm just depressed. We don't. We go the other way. We go, oh man, this world is driving me crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not depressed. But there might be people in my life that are making me depressed. So if the people in my life would just stop making me depressed, I wouldn't have to be depressed. It's all wrong thinking. It's all denial driven. It's a complete lack of looking at ourselves. And I'll get to that a lot more here in a minute. And then we end up at 7, which is now we're just losing control of our own behavior. Right? Things are just getting crazy. We could be very disruptive. We might be interrupting in conversations. We don't let people finish what they're saying. We don't even finish what we're saying. We're losing control of our behavior, which then leads to the next stage, which is now we're recognizing that we're losing control of our behavior. And when you get to that point, this is where we bring out the F it button. This is where we're getting ready to hit this a whole bunch. And now that we've recognized our loss of control of our lives, it's just F this, F that, screw this, screw that. And we're totally confused. I mean, there's a legitimacy to this. In the addict brain, we can end up very quickly at this place where we were doing good for a little bit, and very quickly it's all gone. It could be a matter of hours or days, and just like that. So there's a lot of confusion there. But at this point, we get hopeless. We start running out of options, which is number 9, option reduction. At this point, you don't have to have really lost anything yet. Whatever we've managed to rebuild in recovery, you don't have to have lost it yet, but it's on its way. The losing part comes after the drinking part begins. So we're still maybe hanging on to a job, or we're hanging on to a relationship, and we're sort of holding life up, but it's deteriorating quickly. We're cascading through these stages of relapse, and then bam, we drink. And then, of course, once you drink, it's over. It's done. We drink, we use. The only thing that will stop that process is some sort of external event. We will not stop it. It will take getting arrested. It will take injuring ourselves. It will take some sort of event that disrupts that using process. We, the addict, the alcoholic, will not stop it on our own. And you know that that's true because we never have. We've never stopped it on our own. And then, of course, some people are going, well, that's not true. I quit for 2 weeks once. And then we started again. Shoot, I could quit for 6 months. I could quit for a year. But without a new way of living, we will always default back to the old way of living. All the time. Until change occurs. Remember, the definition of change is to make or become different. So as long as we're the same person, we don't adopt any new ideas. We don't We don't grab onto any new principles. We don't make an effort to follow any new course of action. We may have new information in our head, but until we actually begin to follow those, we're not changing. We're just the same. We've just increased our knowledge base. I don't know if it's in one of the stories in the big book or I've just heard it at AA meetings, but there's a saying, we end up with a head full of knowledge and a belly full of beer, and that's how we live. Okay, so there's actually one after that. Once we've relapsed and we're on the relapse train, there's nothing left but, and this is accurate. Eventually we think suicide, we think homicide, we look for a relationship to take care of us, and that's where we're stuck. Until we die, we accidentally overdose, we intentionally overdose, we get in an accident that kills us or maims us or whatever it is, until there's some life-altering event to stop us. We won't stop it on our own. We never have. That's the disease of alcoholism. If we could stop it on our own, we would have already stopped it. Which leads us right back to the very first stage, which is denial. So we could be doing good, we're going along, and it's probably safe to say we deal with a little bit of denial every day, and certainly throughout this process as we're learning new things that we don't want to look at. It's very easy to go, oh no, that's not me. Oh gosh, no, that's not me. Oh no, can't relate. Oh yeah, that's my dog, that's my mom, that's my cousin, that's my, we want to put these things off on others, but eventually we have to own it. And so just as the denial kind of filters into the early recovery process, it's a challenge. But that's why time is so important. We need, nobody can ever change in a 30-day period. We need time to be able to resist. We need time to be able to reject. Time to relate, what? It's not helping me, it's hurting me. And then eventually, we go through this, of course, there's a whole other group topic, but we end up in a place where it's like, wow, I'm sober, but I'm still miserable. Things start to make sense. We start to break the denial, and then we start chasing reality. We can get into the truth, however painful that is. So, let me come over here. Denial, I've got so many examples on here, and I want to try to go through each one of them as quickly as possible, because remember, the very nature of denial says, oh, I don't have it. No, I don't have denial. So I like to come up with as many examples as possible, because eventually something will click. Now, that doesn't mean, the person with denial will finally discover one thing that applies to them. What it means is they may recognize one thing that applies to them, but the reality is every single thing on that board applies to them. That's denial. Denial looks like this. I got this. Right? The famous last words, I got this. I'm fine. I don't need to follow recovery principles. I don't need to read that big book. I don't need to reread my lecture notes. I don't need to follow any kind of routine. I definitely don't see the point in making my bed every day. Why should I have to take a shower every day? It's not like I'm going on a date, right? That's denial. That denial is just us just rejecting, full out rejecting what might be asked of us, instead of just following. Life would get so simple if we just, and eventually in recovery we learn that. Life is just so simple. Just do what the people who came before us did, and boom, it's over. We don't ever have to worry again. I don't really have a problem. That's my favorite one. I don't really have a problem. I'll be fine if I can just have a friend. If I could just have a job. If I could just have a little bit more money. If I could just have a TV, if I could just have a car, if I could just get my car fixed, if I could just, right, the if-onlys. If only this other thing could happen, then I'm fine. I definitely don't have a drinking problem. I don't have a using problem. I don't have a spending problem or a budgeting problem or a behavioral problem or an irresponsibility problem. I don't have any of those problems. I just need my dang television to work. I just need people to get off my back. I just need a working car. I just need this, that, and the other. That's denial. And by the way, as you guys know, denial doesn't just apply to addiction and alcoholism. Every human deals with a sense of denial from time to time, but that's why a willingness to live in reality is so vital. And that's kind of what normal people are able to do. They can have an experience where, gosh, it's not very comfortable. It might even be fearful. But what's reality? And then we just follow a solution that consists of living in reality. Denial is I got to get out of reality. I don't want to live in reality. The other one, I'll be fine, is if I could just get my own place. If I could just have my own place, then I'll be fine. I just need to help this other person. Right? That's a famous, you can apply that to so many things, but I've seen many people shoot themselves in the foot under the guise of helping others. Right? Well, I was just trying to help this person, and I went over to their house because only I can help them, and I walked in, and oh my God, he had a big old bottle of whiskey out, and then I went ahead and started drinking thinking I would connect, and 18 days later, I'm finally crawling out of a ditch, and gosh, I don't know what happened. I was just trying to help that person. Or there's a mound of cocaine on the table, and that's why, again, there's even recovery rules for that kind of stuff. Heck, there's biblical rules for that kind of stuff. That's why denial, recognizing our denial, is so important. Reality would tell us, man, I got this friend and I'm concerned about him and I think he might be in trouble, but if I go over there by myself, I'm probably going to get drunk. So I might need to take some help with me. I might need to consult someone to help me see reality. This is my favorite one. I used to live in this one a lot. Well, I had a life before, I just need to get back to it. Right? Y'all are making such a big deal about nothing. Yeah, I went through a little difficult time, but whatever, 5 years ago I did this and I had this and I was doing this and I had that. I just need to get back to that, which is insane. Because if that were possible, what's stopping us? If it was possible for us to just get back to something, why haven't we done it? Because the disease of alcoholism and addiction is a progressive brain disease. We're not getting better until recovery. We're getting worse. So we will never just magically get what was that one movie, Jumper, where they could think themselves into another location? Very strange idea, but that always reminds me of addicts. That's really how we think. If I could just jump back into time. That's unrealistic. That's denial. That is so far-fetched from reality. It's not going to happen. It doesn't mean we can't rebuild some things that period in our life looked like, the good things, but that's the key. We have to rebuild them. We have to change. We have to rebuild ourselves. We have to work towards it, and then we can have them in the future. But this statement here is just such a straight black and white denial, lost in fantasy, never going to happen. I used to have some stuff, so I'm sure I'll be okay in the future, basically. Okay, now this refers to using itself. Just just the substance that we like to use. I've heard this a million times too. It's pot, it's alcohol, it's what God made it. It's all natural. What's the big deal? Well, here's the thing. This is why that's denial. Well, that's real. That's reality, right? God made all this stuff. That's real, man. The reason why that's denial also is because God was the source of all drugs. All drugs derive from something natural. Just pick one. Even pharmaceuticals, as synthetic as they are based in some plant, right? But that's not our problem. Our problem is that we are willing to lie, manipulate, steal, hurt others, get hurt, lose stuff, and self-destruct to get it. The drug isn't our problem. The alcohol isn't our problem. Our problem is our behavior because of it. That's denial. That's a complete disconnect from reality. Complete disconnect. That's like saying, you can have anything nice in your life that you can justify, but you go out there every day with a baseball bat and you beat the daylights out of it, and it's all beat up and it's torn up and you've slit the tires. It's like, that's my car. I own that car. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, well, that's real good stewardship. You've destroyed it to the point where it's not even usable. But God made it, right? God made that stuff, so it's okay. It's not about the thing. It's what we are willing to compromise, what we are willing to become to do it. That's the problem. So that's why, when we talk about change and transformation, when we become different, all of a sudden, all these excuses, all these things we thought we couldn't live without become very easy to live without. It's not about the thing. Denial is a defense mechanism to avoid reality. And I put a couple on here. We got rationalize, minimize, and, okay, I guess I just left it with the two. I had another one I was going to put on. Okay, so we'll focus on rationalizing as a technique to deny something. Minimizing is a huge part of denial. Rationalizing, that's the definition, is an attempt to explain or justify one's behavior or actions. Right? So that's what we're doing when we're denying something. We're just coming up with what we think is a believable excuse. And it usually has to do with what someone else is not doing or is offending us in some way. Alcoholics and addicts are masters of rationalization. We use it to stay in denial. You could apply it to the actual using. It's not a big deal, and it's not like I drank as much as I did last time. But remember, it's not really a drinking and using problem. So even when we're going through periods where we're not drinking or using, we're still rationalizing our behavior. We're still not living up to our responsibilities. I just haven't drank today. Well, why aren't you living up to your responsibilities? Oh, well, how could I possibly? I mean, you won't buy me a new car. How could I possibly live up to my responsibilities when you, et cetera, et cetera. It's avoidance. It's all about avoiding our responsibility. Minimizing is when we reduce the seriousness or the significance of something, which also helps us to avoid it. The seriousness. And I've got a whole thing over here on the right side, an actual example of minimizing. But it's like, wow, Bob, you've got a waterfall of blood gushing out of your head, right? That could be reality. And Bob quickly says, "Oh, no, it's nothing. It's just a little scrape." That's what minimizing. We take the things that are so serious and so important in our lives, and because we we have a tendency to really screw things up, and we don't want to feel bad about it, so we'll just minimize it, right? It's like we were talking about in the beginning. It's like, well, if I crawl underneath the sheet in the middle of the living room, then no one will know that I'm there. Even though, everybody knows that I'm there, and I'm still not, I'm still missing bedtime. I'm still avoiding some responsibility. Talking about it, or minimizing it to everybody doesn't change the reality of it. Right? Bob still has blood gushing from his head. If he will admit it, then he can get help. But as long as he minimizes it or denies it, he's going to die from a loss of blood. And that's the crazy thing. Addicts and alcoholics, we have made such a disaster of our lives. And in the beginning, we just don't see it. We just don't see it. We really don't see it. It can seem like we're being defiant. It can seem like, we've just got a complete disconnect in our intellect. But what's happening is that denial is so powerful, we don't see the seriousness of it. And a lot of that is, like what you were talking about, a lot of that has to do with, well, I want to be able to drink again. I don't want to be able to use again. So if I break denial and I start living in reality, then I'm going to have to start taking some responsibility, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to pretend like there's nothing to see here, and then I'll be able to keep drinking. Not for long. Okay, so, let me see. Yeah. Okay, this is another example. Okay, so think about in the beginning, I'm not going to, you guys can share if you want, but we don't have to spend a lot of time on that right now, because we've been doing that a lot in group, but think about at the point when we begin a recovery process, and I've got a whole thing on this side, but this is kind of the short version. We've probably lost our job, we've probably lost our home, we've lost money, we've probably lost a car, or at least can't afford to fix it, we've lost our dignity, we've lost relationships, we've lost our freedom, and don't think just because you didn't go to jail, you haven't lost your freedom. Being stuck in a room is a loss of freedom. We lose our health, but what do we think? What are we thinking about that situation? Right? That's the reality. It's just like, there is no living happening. We're just existing. But we say, it's no big deal. It's not that big a deal. Y'all are making such a big deal about stuff. What are you doing? We just don't get it. That is what the disease of addiction has done to our brain. Our pathways are so jacked up. We are so disconnected from reality. And again, that's why time is such a necessary element, of any kind of change. So here we are. Denial keeps a person stuck in fantasy. Unrealistic expectation. That was the third one I was thinking of. I forgot I made it its own category. Okay, so an unrealistic expectation is just expecting life to simply work out, right? I mean, everybody knows what an unrealistic expectation is. But with the addict brain, to us, it's a very realistic expectation, right? If I want something, I should be able to have it, right? What's wrong with that? That's a very realistic expectation. And of course, that's not. It's a total disconnect from reality. We think things like life should be fair, I should have what I want just because I want it. With unrealistic expectations comes with a lot of critiquing of others. We were talking about this earlier in a really short group we were doing earlier about some of the things that we become so afraid of in ourselves, or also things that we project to the world. We're so afraid of being criticized by others, but in our denial, that's what we do. We're constantly critiquing the world, or the people around us. Or it doesn't have to be people around us, it can be anybody. We complain, We are confused that others seem to succeed with less ability. Right? We look around and we go, oh, that's not fair. That guy, he shouldn't be able to do that because I know him and he's stupid and he's never worked a day in his life, and how can he possibly have that? Right? We just critique and complain, but we deny reality. Reality is the reason that other people succeed where we don't is because they make greater efforts than we do. You know, you want to be sober for 20 years, then we got to do the things that are required to maintain sobriety. Unrealistic expectation is thinking that we're just supposed to be in a certain place, have certain things, do certain things simply because we want them. And after all, I know a lot of other people who have those things and they didn't work for them, which is denial, right? They did. Most people work for things, whether it's working towards your recovery, working towards some sort of career success or education, whatever it is. Most people work for them. But in our denial, we will pick out the 1% that might apply to what we're thinking. And we will reject the 99% of the people who actually made an effort to get what they have. That's denial. We never compare ourselves with people who are succeeding. We always compare ourselves against people who aren't. Right? We look at this person over here and we go, well, you know, that's not fair. So-and-so didn't have to do that thing, so why should I have to do that thing? We never look at the guy who, you know, whatever, starts running bleachers at 4 o'clock in the morning and he's at his desk by 6 and he's done more work by 9 o'clock than most of us have done all day. We never compare ourselves to that guy. We never say, wow, look all the stuff that he's willing to do to succeed. I should do that too if I want to succeed. You won't hear that coming out of the mouth of an active addict brain. We just can't get there in the beginning, but we can work towards it. You know, that's why in the beginning of recovery, it's just all about just slowing down and just taking it simple and just do the next right thing, because that's literally how simple we need to have it. You know, like the Apostle Paul talks about, you know, we just got to be on breast milk for a while. We're just infants. We just need it real basic. But denial will keep you from growing past that. Denial will destroy us. Okay, that's just kind of a replay. Okay, so here's my extreme denial example. And this is, it's funny, it's entertaining, because we all do it. I recognize myself. Every time I put these boards together, I see myself all over again. People ask me a lot, you know, how come you haven't moved to, why don't you know, you got a projector, why don't you do PowerPoints, blah, 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 why don't you get a smart board? And the honest answer is because I like writing it out. Yeah, it takes a lot longer to write out this stuff every single day, but when I have to write it out every single day, it's like me replenishing my own recovery. I need to write these out. Just like people sit in here and take notes, I do the same thing when I wrote the board out. Because I don't want to drink today. I don't want to drink tomorrow. I don't want to drink the next day. So if I'll do certain things, I don't have to. So that's what makes it so easy to come up with these extreme denial examples, because I've done it. I did it. And I'll do it tomorrow if I'm not working recovery. Okay, so here's the reality, right? Here's a realistic scenario. Okay, here, in reality, I haven't worked in, let's say, 1 to 3 years. That's pretty typical. By the time we get to this point, it's not like we've been holding down a job, right? Nothing consistent anyway. So we haven't really worked in, say, 1 to 3 years. We've probably lost our home. We're probably living with someone else who's taking care of us or providing for our existence. We are dealing with lost and strained relationships. We've probably lost a car, or at least we can't afford to get the one we have fixed. or maybe even put gas in it now at $6 a gallon. Our daily routine consists of, remember this is a daily routine for 1 to 3 years. It consists of stealing money, stealing items to pawn, because we probably already ran out of our own items to pawn, seeking drugs or alcohol, but we first got to get the money, and then using drugs or alcohol, and arguing a lot, complaining a lot, probably watching some TV, roaming around, just kind of mindlessly. Hey, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to go here, I want to go there. That's not productive. Meaningless tasks. You know, we might decide, I'm going to clean out the garage or I'm going to clean out the closet in the garage, and you know, especially like if you're tweaking on meth, you can spend 12 hours destroying the closet in the garage, right? We don't actually accomplish anything. It's just a meaningless task. Part of our daily routine is either passing out or blacking out, and that's if you're alcoholic or an addict. Getting hurt, hurting others, and that can be emotionally or physically. Not remembering things, and then we'll do it all over again the next day. We'll do it all over again the next day, and we've probably been doing it between 1 to 3 years before we begin recovery. And that's real. That's exactly where we were. And it's probably way worse for some of us. And yet, we really believe, I'm not that bad. That's why, I always say, addicts, we like to keep things in the gray area. We want to debate. We want to debate. We don't want to talk facts. We want to debate the gray area. And so we do this thing that I call keyword searching, right? So when we're being held accountable, or maybe we're being confronted about our behavior, we're not really paying attention to the topic of that discussion. We're searching for keywords out of the other person's mouth, and as soon as we hear one we can latch onto, we'll draw the conversation to that. And it could be, gosh, you totaled the car, and now mom can't get to work, and then the insurance adjuster had to come to the house, and we'll go, yeah, that insurance adjuster, that guy was so mean, and he didn't appreciate me, and he made things so difficult. And now we're within a split second, we've just moved the conversation off of our behavior to how mean the insurance adjuster was, completely bypassing, avoiding the fact that we just totaled the car in a complete drunk blackout, or whatever the serious reality was. Keyword searching. And, as recovering addicts, we got to pay attention to that in ourselves. You got to start recognizing it. And for our family and our friends, don't get tripped up on the keyword search, because we're masters of it. We are masters of rationalizing, and we are masters of moving us off. That's why we can spend an entire day keeping you going in circles and never anything resolved. But then there's also the other element of you can't really rationalize, with a drunk person or a high person. It's like a no-win deal. But this has always been the amazing thing to me, is we can live in this reality where life is obviously a complete disaster. But these are the things, the addict things. I'm not that bad, but you do this, and you do that, and you need to change, and you need to stop complaining, and blah, 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 blah. I don't have a problem. I've seen people that are way worse. I have to drink just to deal with you. You're overreacting. I'm the smartest person in the world. Maybe you don't say that, but we think that. Addicts and alcoholics, we think we're the smartest person in the world. That's why we love to debate. And our idea of, finally we can the other person we're debating with gets so frustrated, they just throw their arms in the air and they just walk out of the room because they're done. Right? It's a ridiculous conversation, but to the addict alcoholic, we literally believe in that moment we just won the argument. That's what denial does for us. Denial will keep us so sick, stuck, disconnected, avoidant, defensive, until we relapse, and then we're either going to die, we're going to die by choice, or we're going to try to kill somebody else accidentally, maybe on purpose. And at the very least, we find a relationship that will take care of us. And that kind of depends on your age. A lot of times, if you're older, you might find a girlfriend who is extremely codependent, and she's got her own issues, and they'll take us in and they'll provide for us the rest of our lives, which is going to be short. It's not like, wow, that happens 50. No, we're not talking 50 years. We're talking maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months, especially as as crazy as the illicit drugs are getting now. We're putting fentanyl in everything, I guess, except alcohol. But the alcohol content is totally different now. What was it? Back when I was drinking, this is how old I am, it was like you had to go to Texas to get 6-point beer. Or I guess you could get it at a liquor store, but it wasn't cold. So it was basically drinking a whole lot of 3-point beer from convenience stores. Now, you can get, I think, up to maybe 21% alcohol content from a convenience store. What is that? That's like a few 6-packs and just a couple of drinks. That's insane. That's insane. So, and the numbers bear this out. The accidental overdoses today are just so alarming. It's not even close. They've quadrupled just in the last 2 years, I think. The reality is we are going to die. As offensive as that sounds, we're going to die. Some of us are going to die very quickly, in a head-on collision, or just, a needle in the arm and 20 seconds later you're out. And some of us are going to die very slowly, very miserably, and then just pass out into a ditch, and that's that. And 3 days later, some homeless guy walking down the street, some hitchhiker finds our body. That's the reality. But when we're early in recovery, we don't believe that for a second. I'm bulletproof. That won't happen to me because I'm not that bad. It's like what you were saying in the very beginning. If I really admit this thing, then that means I'm going to have to do something about it. And I don't want to have to do anything about it, so I'm just going to pretend it's not reality. But look at what happens. We don't just stay in reality. What happens next is now we just start avoiding. We start avoiding people. We start avoiding everything and become very defensive. And then we start crisis building, and then we become stuck, and then we lose control, and defensive and depressive, blah, 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 blah. Nobody wants to live like that. It reminds me of that, it's been around a long time. It's not just a recovery thing, but it's like when a person is sick and tired of being sick and tired, then we'll make change. And that's why it's so important, for our families to let us be at that place. It's okay that we're not comfortable. It's okay that all of our little creature comfort needs aren't met. It's time for everybody to be sick and tired of being sick and tired, because that's what causes change. Pressure, right? We always, when things are going good, when, if I got a roof over my head and this and that, and all my creature comforts are taken care of, there's no motivation to change. When we start feeling a little bit of pressure, it's just a natural instinct. When we start feeling pressure, then we start desiring change. We start become willing to do something different. Okay, we got 6 minutes. What do you guys want to share about the relapse dynamic?
You guys know my name. I'm a drunk alcoholic. I'm not drunk right now, but I'm a drunk alcoholic slash addict. That's what I want to share with you guys.
That's I noticed yesterday you started saying that. You know, it's like because we've been talking about identity, we've been talking about getting honest with ourselves, all these things. Is that kind of what you're doing? You're really just you're ready to own it. I'm done. This is who I am. It doesn't define me, but this is part of who I am.
It's been a real I guess eye opener. Look, coming here, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. You know what I'm saying? I thought I was done had all this past me, but I now accept I'm a drunk alcoholic, and I don't know. I'm sure my face is getting red, but it is a little embarrassing, but like it's me. So I mean, I'm here to get better, or at least learn how to become better. So.
And it's one part of it.
Yeah,
it's not the whole thing, but it's like if someone has diabetes or cancer, or got their arm chopped off with a chainsaw. They still, there's at first there's some denial, right? I don't have cancer, and I can't be, what's happened in my life, or with diabetes, but then you have to accept it, and it becomes something that has to change what some of your behaviors are, what you do, but it doesn't have to be how the whole world sees you, and it's not who you are in your heart of hearts, it's just something that you have.
I'm a really bad mechanic too. I got so many defects, but we have so many assets too. I think in the beginning, just being able to own that, admit that, I think it's everything. It's us getting honest with ourselves. Most AA circles would suggest that we always think of ourselves as that way. It doesn't really matter to me. What I have found though, just like what Matt's talking about, I still identify, if I go to an AA meeting, or if I'm talking to anybody, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. It's like we were talking about last night. It's not easy to overcome what we need to overcome, and so that's a cool thing. We should be grateful for it. That we're recovering alcoholics. I don't have to live like that today. But in the future, some people will say, well, once you're no longer an addict, once you're no longer using, you're not an addict, and you shouldn't identify that way. I think that's really splitting hairs, and we can very quickly fall into denial and go, see, I'm not an addict anymore, and you're probably going to get high again. So that's a really healthy place to be. It's a very healthy place to be. But one of the things that we're afraid of is not just, well, once I really own that stuff, I'm going to have to do something different. It's also what we think it means. Well, then I'm going to have some label, and then people will think of me a certain way. Well, newsflash, we've already given ourselves that label, right? We're not the little kid underneath the blanket in the living room. People already know. They already see us in this light, and yet they're still around. That fear of rejection or abandonment or judgment or whatever, if it was going to happen, it would have already happened. That's not what the outcome is. It's not what the outcome is, but that's why our fellowship is so important. Were you going to share something?
Oh,
you going to add anything?
I wasn't about to say anything, but
You recognize denial?
oh, yeah, as far as how you maybe think it personally reflects how you look, publicly. So,
What'd you think about my example over here of reality?
I mean, those are generally the types of things that I, can see definitely occurring. People do, regardless, I guess, of what you're addicted to. Things like,
If
I
we're,
would steal things and then end up getting themselves in a bad situation. Definitely.
if
Not really realizing that they're gonna do it by accident.
what's one you could add to that daily routine?
As far as that,
Yeah, from your own experience, one of the things that your daily routine consisted of that's not on the board?
I guess I guess you're kind of in denial before it gets started in there, but yeah, you usually do end up kind of just not really doing anything productive, like watching TV or.
I thought it was paint. Well,
You
I
become pretty
Yeah.
unproductive once you get, or you maybe just don't do anything that's actually like productive as far as fulfilling just daily tasks.
Yeah.
Well, kind of non-productive, but I got like the loss of interest in practically everything that's not directly about yourself. Loss of interest in doing things, loss of interest in
Yeah.
hobbies or fun or being social,
That's a good one. I wasn't even thinking about that. Just the
If it's not going to get me my fix, it doesn't matter.
yeah. We will spend more energy. I mean, we can get so laser focused to use, but then when it's time to like get better and change our life, it's like, yeah, put it off till tomorrow. Put it off till tomorrow. If there was a bottle waiting on us, or if there was a gram of something waiting on us, man, we'd be there in an instant. There's a saying, if you were willing to walk a mile, to get booze, you better be willing to walk a block to go to an AA meeting. We'd walk all over town. I've done it. One day, I drove 12 hours. Actually, I guess I drove 24 hours. I drove 12 hours to another state to pick up pills and turned right back around and came back. And it wasn't like a large truckload amount. I think it was for maybe 30 pills. And then, and I had to get somebody else to pick up my kid at school. I wasn't with them at all that day. I wasn't concerned about, what my work was thinking or anything like that. It's, we will do what we have to do to get drunk or high. But then when we have an opportunity to build an entirely new life for ourselves, we will not do everything that we need to do. Right? And that's natural. But hopefully with time, people who make it, it finally clicks in the brain. Hey, if I'll put in the same amount of energy that I would put into using, I'm going to have a really nice life. And that is reality, of course, right? Well, we get out of stuff whatever we put into it. But one of the other things I was thinking about, like on a daily routine, or like our daily activities consisted of, let's get into some of like the realistic, ugly reality of just being drunk, using every day, doing all this stuff. The nasty words that we've used with our families. We walk around having peed on ourselves. We go day after day after day after day after day without even changing our sheets, which may or may not matter because most of the time we don't even pass out in our bed anyway. You know, that the ugliness of addiction becomes part of our daily routine. And then when we finally stop that process, or some event has stopped that process, we actually say, it's not that big a deal. You're a grown man and you wet yourself every day. That's a huge deal, but that's how sick we are. So I know that's a little crude, but that's the reality. That's what denial does. Denial helps us to just avoid, that's an ugly little detail, and I don't want to talk about that. Well, we need to if we're going to change. Because until we get reality-based, we can't change. We gotta, you know what, I'm a snot, snorting, peeing on myself, rolling around in my dirty clothes, sleeping in the backyard drunk. And I don't want to live like that anymore. Help me change. That is reality-based. And incidentally, those are the people that make it, right? Those are the ones that you see at these AA meetings, and they got it all together. They're happy as a clam. They've been sober for 40 years. They're taking care of their families. They probably own their own business. And, that's what we get when we don't drink or use, whatever. Okay, I'm not sure how long we lasted on YouTube, but because it just phased out. I don't know if it's still recording, but I'll try to upload it later because I think it is at least recording. Thanks for watching if you made it. I hope y'all left me some comments and I'll send it to you, whoever didn't get it. Definitely like that. And we are out. Stop. We'll get the hang of it though. I'm glad you guys are here, so you just didn't matter. But on Thursdays. You're gonna have to be okay, we'll come back. Let's close it out. No, we just gotta close it out. We gotta say a prayer. I just have to run up there and turn it on. We'll close out with the Lord's Prayer, and then everybody can go find some air conditioning. Some cool space. Whose Father, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Oh, what's that saying?
Keep coming back. It works if you work it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Drink it by lick your face.
Keep coming back, and it works if you work it.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Miles.
No, thank you guys. I'm gonna make sure I get that key back in the box. And you weren't out there very long, were you?
No, we just checked the other gate.
Oh, okay. That was totally my fault.
Yeah, she just wanted me to pick up
The locks that couldn't come open.
Well, at first I was trying to open it like it was a padlock, holding it.
Oh, yes, the shackle, yeah.
Then I realized how to open it.
Okay, I don't think it did.
One duration is an hour and two. Or a screen share.
I need to get two different monitors. It's not letting me OBS, it just takes over the monitors. Yeah, see, this was doing this on my OBS. It never really done.
this in his mouth.
Fire pit, charcoal.
So after you roast some hot ones,
Oh, well, yeah, of course. But it does look like we got something in there.
Probably want that back over.
Let's load up.
I was trying to just reload it. Yeah, reload it.
That would be. Just the way people do it. There's just one topic. It's very socially conscious. It's got a neighborhood or community outreach for kids and everything. It does funny things and it shows the kids and the basketball and all that stuff. And they're just, I don't know, 4 minutes long, 5 minutes long. But it makes you want to keep looking at the stuff. It's really interesting. And I know that's what
I don't know what all these do, but I cover about movies to see what other things it says. Editor. Customization. Details.
Yes, sir.